Bibliosophie.
Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Sophie, or welcome back if you've been here before. I'm going to talk to you about books, which is what I typically do, but I'm talking to you about physical books today because I've got various book hauls that I'm combining into one, and I'm talking to you about quite a few books, so buckle in. The first batch of books is some French language books that I picked up in France when I was home for a few weeks in July. When I go back to France, I like to load up on some various books because I can't find French language books as easily in the United States. Most of my life in reading is overwhelmingly Anglophone for a bunch of different reasons. One, because I watch a lot of YouTube and get recommendations from other English language readers. Two, and the predominant reason is that I live in the United States, so what I have available to me is predominantly English language, but I do like to read in French. So I have a little batch, a relatively sizable batch of books. But I call these French language rather than French books because there is exactly one book from a French author, that is by Pascal Quignard, L'amour, la mer. This is not translated into English. It would translate to Love, the Sea. I have never read any Pascal Quignard. I know he's written quite a lot of books, and I know some of them have been translated into English. This takes place in the 17th century, and it has to do with love and music making and art making and kind of apprenticeship and passion in kind of all of the above arenas. I don't really know much about it beyond that. It was just sort of something I saw in my bookshop and thought, oh, okay, yes, absolutely, this seems good to me. I was intrigued. So this is our one actually French book. Moving on to Switzerland, we have the Francophone Charles Ferdinand Ramuz, excuse me, with a collection of essays on writing. This is called Anti-poétique et autres propos sur l'écriture, anti-poetic and other essays on writing. If you know anything about me as a reader, you know that I love to read about writing and read about reading. So this is probably not a book I'm going to read from cover to cover, but definitely will dip into. This is absolutely the type of thing that I love to read about. Moving on to Belgium, we've got two books by Jacqueline Harpman, who has been making the rounds in English for this book, Moi qui n'ai pas connu les hommes, I who have never known men, in English. I assume it was probably translated quite recently because I'm seeing it making the rounds so much. I know about this author thanks to Anne Novella, and in fact, I have these books thanks to her because she very, very sweetly sent them to me. So I was delighted to get a package of these two books. I have already read this one. It had definitely been on my radar for a little while thanks to her, as well as thanks to The Left-Handed Reader. I saw it in, I think, a mid-year review from Lit with Cat, and I think Simon Savage also had mention of it. So it's really, you've probably seen it around, and the hype is real. I loved this. I read this immediately upon receiving my package, basically, and I finished it in under 24 hours. It takes place in an unspecified location. Some women are being held captive, and we don't know why. And it's really about, it's a dystopian, probably future, I guess, with very little context, and it's really about what it means to be human. It's quite short. I can't speak to how it flows in English or in any language other than French, but the writing is so compelling, and it's a really interesting exploration of humanity, connection, past, narrative, etc. So I loved this. I'm super looking forward to reading Orlanda, which is sort of her take on Virginia Woolf's Orlando. It is about gender swapping, gender experience. I haven't read it yet, but I think I'm going to read it quite soon. All right, that ends the things written in French. Now we've got two Austrian books translated into French. Le Mur Invisible is in English The Wall by Marlen Haushofer. This has also recently vastly made the rounds. I think it was reissued probably last year or the year before. It divides people because it is boring. I also did already read this. I loved it as well. I would say that it is very similar to I Who Have Never Known Men. This is I think the more compelling version of this. So if you find that The Wall is too boring for you, I would still try the I Who Have Never Known Men. This takes place at some kind of unspecified time as well, but it was written mid-century. An invisible wall separates a woman from everything else in the world. She is just alone, surviving in nature in the Alps with a dog, a cow, and a cat, and then some various other kind of animals here and there. And it's also very much about what it means to be human, what it means to tell a story, what it means to be alive. I thought it was great. From the same author is Dans la Mansarde. I forgot to check what the English translation of this is, but this is about a bourgeois woman, I think, who is also kind of locked in her life. I forgot. She finds these envelopes. So it's also, I think, about communication and probably humanity. I don't know too much, but I will probably read it soon. That was a terrible description. I'm sorry. And the next and final three are coming from Portuguese or Brazilian Portuguese. Some Clarice Lispector, unsurprising for this channel, an apprentissage in French or an apprenticeship. This is some more Clarice Lispector. I like to read her in French when I can, so this is why I bought this one. Little preview, this is going to be my September book club pick. So you heard it here first. I will be reading it in both, I think, French and English for that, so you don't need to know French, but I do like to read her in French when I can. I do find it kind of easier to deal with, and for similar reasons, I have two Fernando Pessoa offerings in French. One is Passage des Heures, which is a poetry collection, and actually this collection is quite slim and bilingual. I think I will probably read it quite soon. I'm looking forward to reading some of the Portuguese as well, because I'll be able to understand it with the French next to it usually. And this chunker is the Book of Disquiet, which I've mentioned on this channel before. I've wanted to read it for a while. It's one of my projects for the year. So I finally have it, and yeah, I think I will ideally read it in the next few months. I said I was going to read it in 2024, so I'm running out of time to do that. Now for English speakers, English readers, I have a truly massive, one might even say ridiculous, array of books from the library. So with a book haul, there's always the kind of icky side, which is that essentially you're promoting overconsumption. I hope not too much, because it's our library books. However, we have to be honest, it's absolutely the same impulse. This is absolutely the impulse of online shopping, requesting books from the library, and or walking around and saying, ooh, I like this, I like that. You know, you're doing some lèche vitrine and you're just like taking things from the shelf. But at least I'm not spending any money on them. I am using a wonderful establishment. Anyway, enough of that. Some of these are recommended books to me. Some of them are books that I have had on my radar for a while. And some are merely just books that I walked past and thought, oh, why not? The first one of them, I'm doing them basically in size order. The first one is Jon Fosse, Alice at the Fire. Alice at the Fire, excuse me. And this is a book I know nothing about. I've never read any Fosse, and I've wanted to for a while. It's so slim. I walked past it and I thought, I take it. This is about a woman, I think, it's kind of living in the present and living in her memories. I looked at the back and then I kind of forgot. This is probably not a book I'm going to read immediately because I didn't have to request it. So I think it'll be kind of the second or third on the list of priorities, basically. I'm definitely not getting through all of these in the next 21 days. So I have to be strategic here. Another shorty is Antigonic by Anne Carson. I have mentioned this in my book club Substack because August is Antigone month, and I have various versions of Antigone on my plate to read, including Anne Carson's translation / reimagining of the Sophocles play. So I will definitely get to this one quite soon. It's also super, super short. Do you like the flop of books as I move on? I don't know, we'll see. Next is A Month in Siena by Hisham Matar. This was a recommendation from Katie James when we were talking during book club. It is, if I remember correctly, kind of both travel writing and kind of personal writing, interacting with art and culture, which is also a type of nonfiction writing that I just adore. I just love it. The writing that is about a place and the culture and art that place has gotten out of people, and the author's personal history and personal, relationship with those cultural artifacts. I love it. So I think I'm going to read this quite soon. Bold of me to try to record a video without any sort of beverage on hand. Next up is Olga Raun, A Life's Work? No, not at all. My Work. Sorry. But this is about motherhood and creative impulse. I read The Employees a few years ago and loved that short book. This has also been very much hyped and been making the rounds. I highly associated with Benjamin Journal, who's talked about it on his channel and talked to me about it and loved it, but a bunch of other people have read it. So I am really looking forward to reading it. I think this will be kind of soon in the list of TBR. Next up is Pier Paolo Pasolini, The Boys? No, Boys Alive, excuse me, which I just picked up because I was walking through the stacks and I was intrigued. I like Pasolini, and this is, I think, his most famous novel about kind of mid-century Italy. So I don't know if I will get to this, but it's definitely the kind of book that I want to read at some point. We'll see if I get to it. The Pumpkin Eater by Penelope Mortimer is a book that I've vaguely had on my radar for a while, and then it was specifically recommended to me in the comments of my longing video by somebody I forgot. I'm sorry. I will find your name, however. So thank you for mentioning it. I actually don't know what this is about. Apparently there's some longing. I know a lot of people really liked this book. So for the past several years on Instagram and then on YouTube, I've been seeing things about it. The Pumpkin Eater is a surreal black comedy about the wages of adulthood and the pitfalls of parenthood. A nameless woman speaks, at first from the precarious perch of a therapist's couch, and her smart, wry, confiding, immensely sympathetic voice immediately captures and holds our attention. I think I can easily get on with this. Making Space Women and the Man-Made Environment by the Matrix Collective. This is a reissue from Verso, am I correct? Yes. I first heard about this book pretty recently on Pastori Time. Sean was talking about this, and it absolutely, I think it was Sean rather than Bert. Sorry if I got it confused, but I think it was Sean. And I immediately thought, oh, okay, that's a title that absolutely interests me. So clicked on my library website and requested it, and we'll see if and when I get to it. But this is about women's bodies in space and architecture and design, and these are very, very much topics that are fascinating to me. Patrick Langley, The Variations, I picked up completely on a lark. I think it is quite new, not new-ish. It was in the new fiction section I was just walking through, and you know, it's a New York Review of Books edition, and I just was vaguely intrigued. It has something to do with sounds. I can't read the beginning of the blurb because it is blocked by the bar, but there's a hospice for acoustically gifted children. I was just sort of intrigued. It's blurbed by Brendan Taylor, so I don't know. This was purely a coup de cœur. This was just sort of walking through and being curious. Will I get to it immediately? Will I get to it never? I don't know, but I was intrigued by this, so who knows? The Long Form by Joanna Briggs. You have seen on my channel before. I started it. I have read a quarter of it, I think, and liked it fine. I didn't fall in love with it when I was reading it a few months ago. Mostly I didn't finish it because my loan expired. I had to return it to the library. So I said I would finish it. I have loved, did I say Joanna Briggs? I'm sorry, I'm confusing her with Joanna Biggs. Kate Briggs. I have loved Kate Briggs' writing before, and so I wanna give this a shot. I like the writing of this. The story isn't really encompassing me, but it is very much about the art of writing and the art of creating, intersecting with being a woman and specifically being a mother. So I will definitely give this another shot, I think. I need a rest. Had some water. Also, I'm in full sun, so it's a lot. I'm suffering, okay? This is very, very difficult work I'm doing. It's not. It's fine. I have a few poetry books. The first one was because I specifically was looking for it, and the rest is because I was in the poetry section, and then I kind of found some various things interesting. By the way, the person who left me a comment about Penelope Mortimer, was "This is very annoying." So thank you for the recommendation. The first poetry book is one I've read since taking it out from the library. Information Desk, an epic by Robin Schiff, was recommended to me, I think a year ago, I think probably during August of last year, by Matthew Sharapa. I couldn't find it then, and I kind of forgot about it until quite recently when The Only Real Property read it and reviewed it on her channel. And so that immediately reminded me to look for it. I also really loved it. It is very much me-ish. This is about the art of the Met Museum. It is about the intersection of people and art and stories. It's quite a breathless work, and it's a lot to dig through. I would love to reread this because it's tiring. This is not a poetry book that I was able to read in one day, for instance. I had to do it in a few sittings, and it's a lot. But it's very much ekphrastic, which is something I adore. and it's so much about kind of human history and material things. So I really loved it. All right, 4 things I picked up at semi-random. Reenactments, Poems and Translation by Haidan Fan. I don't know anything about this. Honestly, I liked the cover and the little bits that I read while in the stacks intrigued me. Yeah, poems and translations, reenactments, that's the kinds of things I really love. But I don't know this poet at all, so I'm excited to discover their work. Tracy K. Smith is a poet whose work I know. I've not read this collection, but I've really enjoyed other collections and individual poems by Smith. What is this one called? Sorry, Wade in the Water, which I didn't know about, but basically picked it up because it was a Smith joint. Prelude by Bryn Rebel Henry, I think. I don't know anything about. I liked the cover, basically, and I liked the little bits and pieces of poetry that I read in the stacks. When I don't know anything about a poet, basically I pick things based on the title, the covers, and then I look through and just kind of, oh, okay, interesting, yeah. And I really love to use the library for poetry for that reason, because you have so many things that you can discover, and you know, they're short. It's not a huge commitment of your time. By the way, August is the month of the Seeley Challenge. Last year I participated. This year I'm not doing it. I think it kind of broke me a little bit last year, but the challenge is to read a book of poetry every day. And I didn't quite do 31 days of poetry, but I read every day. I read poetry every day, and I think I finished something like 28 or 29 books of poetry last August. So, whew. But I'll pitch it for you, even though we're well into August now. And finally, Tommy Pico is a poet that I also know and like already. I've never read IRL, but I saw it and I thought, oh, okay, I will happily read this collection as well. Pico is a queer indigenous poet whose poems I find are really also kind of breathless in a different way, actually, and use a lot of different types of language, a lot of vernacular, a lot of heightened language. You can tell by the name IRL, and so I've also really enjoyed the poems and collections I've read before. And we're on our last 2 books in this marathon. Alba de Céspedes, Her Side of the Story, has been on my radar for a little while. I read her Forbidden Notebook 2 years ago, I think, but I haven't read this chunker. Céspedes was a mid-century Italian feminist writer who's had kind of increased visibility in recent years because of Elena Ferrante championing her work, and in fact Anne Goldstein is the translator of Céspedes' work as well. So as I said, I knew about this book for a little while, but it's because of Sloth Readers Club. I think is that your handle, Alex? I think so, I will check. Who was reading this book in a couple of vlogs recently, and it made me want to read it also. So thank you for the push to finally read this. We'll see when I get to it, she said while looking around at the pile of books, but I would like to get to this sooner rather than later. And finally, Jennifer Higgy, The Mirror and the Palette, was not directly a recommendation from Katie James, but Katie recommended another book of Higgy's, which I wasn't able to get as quickly as this one. So I requested this one, which is about women and self-portraiture through art history. So another topic that is very, very interesting to me, art history at the intersection of feminism you know, look, sometimes you're a stereotype and you just have to deal with it. It's okay. That concludes my tour around the too many books that I currently have added to my conceptual TBR. Let me know if I forgot to also mention you as somebody who recently read and recommended one of these books. I think I was relatively thorough in citing my sources, but I'm sure I forgot some people. Let me know if you have read them and I don't know about it. Let me know if you want to read some of these. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.